This is a quick video to go through your assessment task for Year 11 Biology. Now from Connect you'll actually see a link to go to our Google course, and on the Google course you'll actually open up your own copy of an assessment task for this. And we're just going to quickly go through what it looks like. So here's your assessment task, and we go through the task overview. Basically there are two parts to this. You're going to be showing that you can collect a group of insects, that you can display them so that you can actually show that you've got different orders of insects there, that you've been able to communicate your understanding about where they were from and what order they're in with labels properly, and most importantly that your journal shows that you've not only collected that insect but you have scientifically categorized and taken down notes on where you got the insect, where it came from, the adaptations that it has. You've drawn it and sketched it and labeled its different structural adaptations. That you've actually done some in-depth focused work on trying to identify not just the insect but all the different parts that help it to survive so successfully in the environment that it's found in. Then you're going to be doing some questions on dichotomous keys, reading them and making your own. So the first part is the insect collection, and realize here that it must come with a journal. That is the little book that I gave you guys. There's actually several steps that you need to follow, and we've already started them in class. First of all, we had to collect the insects and euthanize them according to the proper instructions, so it's done humanely. Now as we're going through and collecting these insects, we're going to be filling out that journal that I gave you, and I'm going to take you through exactly what I need to see in that, because you're going to be handing that in. You must make sure that you collect and preserve at least 7 specimens, different species. They must be different species, and they have to be adults. They can't be juveniles. So each one has to be from a different order of insect, and you must correctly identify and label them. This is essential because in science, when we actually collect these, they're actually specimens from a specific area and a specific time. Now the type of insects, the number of insects and where they are found tells us an awful lot about the environment, how healthy it is, and whether there are any problems with the environment that we need to be aware of. So they must be labelled correctly to tell us where they've come from, what time of year, how and where they were collected in that environment. You're going to be doing a report based on your journal work about the insects you've collected, and essentially the information that you've put in your journal will make up that report. So for each species you need to list its structural characteristics. You also have to give a full level of classification for it, all the way down to its order or family level. And you need to make sure that you list the specific characteristics that helped you to identify it as part of that order. So remember, in our video on insects, we went through the specific characteristics that make an insect fall into a particular order. Then you're going to be looking at the adaptations of each of those insects and talking about what the adaptation is, explain how it helps that insect survive in its natural habitat, and discuss how this adaptation relates back to the theoretical concepts that we learn about how this adaptation is actually helping at a species level and how it helps that species survive. So it's more about not just the adaptation, but how it actually helps that species be successful as a group. The last thing that you need to do is complete a report that evaluates how well you did your display. Have you set it out nicely? Have you used the correct collection techniques? Have you got a good quality specimen? Have you displayed them properly? Have you pinned them out properly? Have you labelled them properly so that people can actually learn from your collection a bit about not just the insects but the area in which you collected them, because they reflect the quality and the health of the environment that they come in. Insects are the most important animals for that. And the biggest thing you need to do there is talk about how you could do it better next time. Now let's just flip over to my OneNote here so that we can have a look at what I really need to have in your journal to help you complete this report. Now, in my previous video, or one of them, we talked about the different types of collection techniques that you can use. You do need to write down what type of technique you used each time. But the other thing is, in your journal, for every specimen you collect, you need to write down what date you got it, when you got it, time of day, the locality, so exactly where, was it Biwa, was it Caboolture, so the neighbourhood you got it, plus the area in that locality. So we actually call that a niche. You'll find out a bit more about that later, but the specific place that you find that insect. And so we're thinking about things like under the bark, or in the water at the back of the oval, or in the grass on the oval. The very specific place that they like to hang out in that environment or locality. That's the habitat and niche. Now the other thing I need you to look at is, are there any specific behaviours that you might note about that insect? Was it showing distinctive mating behaviours where it was trying to attack maybe a fellow insect of the same sex, so they're competing for females, or was it trying to find food? Things like that that help us determine what it was doing and why it was in that area. The next thing you have to do is you have to sketch your insect, and it has to follow the KISS principles. Keep it simple, stupid. It needs to be 2D. It can have some shading, but very simple shading. It must be labelled. It must be a line drawing, not a work of art. It must be very straightforward and very detailed, but easy for people to quickly interpret without having to try and figure it out because you've tried to be fancy. You must label the different structural characteristics that you can see on your insect. So I'm thinking things like the mouth parts, the antennae, things that put it in that order, that make it unique for that order, very important. The types of wings that it has, both hind and fore wings, the legs and what their shape is like, because that's one of the determining factors with different orders in the insects. Colours are very important. You can make notes on the colours, because colour, of course, is something that determines whether or not an insect's camouflaged in its environment or not. And any other structural characteristics that are going to affect its survival. Structural characteristics that are going to affect its survival. You need to show them on your drawing, because you're going to talk about them in your report. So it's very important to list them all down there now. And you need to do that for every single insect you catch to put in your collection. The last thing that's really, really helpful is make notes on what worked and what didn't, so that you can start to think and evaluate your work and think how to do better next time. Remember how you have to do that as part of your assignment? It's really important. If you make notes here, it helps you to then evaluate later on, oh yeah, that really didn't work, we had to do it that way. You can then write your own reflection on how you're going to improve next time an awful lot easier. Now, if you go through the rest of the report, there's a whole heap of little insect guidelines here that you can use to help find and identify the different insects. I'll also have a video up on Connect that helps you to learn how to pin them out correctly by the Queensland Museum. There's also pinning guidelines here, because every different order of insect has specific structural characteristics, and if you don't pin them right, it means that you destroy information that scientists can use later on. This is not just a thing that scientists do for fun. This is actually collecting information on an area that they can then use through the years to figure out how insects have changed, whether there were lots of males or females in the area, what types of insects were there that will actually help us determine the health of the ecosystem. So if we tell you to pin to a side of an insect, it's because if you pin in the middle, you'll actually destroy some of the characteristics that help us to identify it. It could be markings underneath that help us determine its sex. It could be other specific things like that. So you need to make sure you pin it where we tell you to. And it has to be pinned straight and off the paper so that the legs don't get really squished, but it needs to be nice and straight. And as you can see here, there's different orders of insects that get pinned either in the middle or to the side. There's also different things with wings. So with these species here, we actually pin out the wings straight both sides, okay? And with these species here, we actually pin out one side and leave the other side down so that we can see what they look like when they have them folded away. Small insects. Yes, you can get small insects like ants. You can actually pin them out. But you can't put the pin through them because you usually destroy the specimen. The idea is to actually glue a small wedge of cardboard onto the side of the insect and then put the pin through the cardboard. And that allows you to pin them out without destroying them. We call this a stage. And we can show you this in the lab as we go, depending on what insect you have. Now, every single insect must be labelled properly. This is extremely important, and all of these categories need to be put in if you're to get full marks. No matter what, you must put your name on there as well. This is important when we actually photograph it as well, so that we know whose collection we're looking at, because I actually photograph each insect that you collect and how you have pinned it out. You need to give me the classification of the insect, its order, your name, first and last, the date you collected it, your locality. Now this label has to be glued on, as we've shown you in photos, below the pin with that insect, and we'll actually show you the labels. They need to be quite small. You can print them out on a computer, and they need to be done in black ink. They can be handwritten or they can be typed. Lastly, part B is showing your understanding of biology. So the first lot of questions here takes you through different dichotomous keys where you have to identify species based on those dichotomous keys to prove that you can use them, like here. So this is proving that you can use dichotomous keys to figure out what type of plant this is using the information in the picture. The next thing is the same sort of thing except with snakes. Again, you have to figure out what type of snakes you have there. And the third question is you have to make your own dichotomous key using the rules that were in the video that I made on how to make a dichotomous key. It has to look like this. Okay, with the two sets of questions that put you to another two sets of questions or a name, you have to follow those rules. You have to talk about structural adaptations that are quite easy for us to see in the adult of the species. Go back to the video. There's a whole heap of rules that you need to follow, and the PDF of those rules is also available for you on Connect. So you need to make your own dichotomous key to split up all of these marsupials. The very last question is this. Read the following description of this order, Diprodonta. You need to talk about whether or not you agree about a certain organism belonging to this order, and you have to justify your reasons why you agree or disagree. And then at the very end here, we have our criteria that you can read through and see how you will be marked on this assessment piece.